iron, I shall be happy to see them. On September 12th, the French minister, the Chevalier de la...
Being both divorced and alienated from any source of support, even though nobody worked, but they had the potential to make some rudimentary income. Has made me like have more grateful moments when I open the fridge, period. I mean, I've never said, oh my God, thank God there's something in there. Exclamation point. Quote,
the Chevalier de la Luzerne and his highly observant secretary, Francois Barbé-Marbois, met with Washington at Fishkill, New York. Barbé-Marbois jotted down valuable vignettes of an unbuttoned Washington, who personally squired them by boat to his headquarters and showed that he was adept at navigation. The general held the tiller, recalled Barbé-Marbois, and during a little squall which required skill and practice, proved to us that this work was no less known to him than our other bits of useful knowledge.
Oh man, it didn't even fit. Are you kidding?
Greatly taken with Washington, the secretary found him becomingly modest, gracious, and urbane. He is 50 years old, well-built, rather thin. He carries himself freely and with a sort of military grace. He is masculine-looking, without his features being less gentle on that account. I have never seen anyone who was more naturally and spontaneously polite. Accustomed to imperious officers, Barbé-Marbois was charmed by Washington's more democratic manner, which, contrary to the behavior of most generals, had grown more pronounced as the war progressed. The Frenchman noted Washington's cordial relations with his aides. I have seen him for some time in the midst of his staff, and he has always appeared even-tempered, tranquil, and orderly in his occupations, and serious in his conversation. He asks few questions, listens attentively, and answers in a low tone and with few words. He is serious in business. In another sharp departure from European formality, Washington engaged in sports with subordinates, and sometimes throws and catches a ball for whole hours with his aides-de-camp. Aware of the impression he made, Washington knew that he needed to exhibit sterling Republican simplicity to the French as proof of American virtue. It was not my intention to depart from that plain and simple manner of living which accords with the real interest and policy of men struggling under every difficulty for the attainment of the most inestimable blessing of life. Liberty, Washington wrote to Lafayette. The Chevalier was polite enough to approve my principle and condescended to appear pleased with our Spartan living. With his flair for political stagecraft, Washington set up his dining marquee, an oval tent with a dark green ceiling on the Hudson shore, so close to the river that the tide periodically tugged at pins holding the tent erect. Ever the attentive host, he had musicians play a medley of French and American martial tunes.
She wants treats.
Barbé-Marbois saw that Washington displayed quiet dignity in dealing with people, and in social settings allowed himself a restricted gaiety. He is reverent without bigotry and abhors swearing, which he punishes with the greatest severity, he reported. At meals, the self-effacing Washington allowed his young aides to propose toasts. All the generals and the higher officers were there, Barbé-Marbois remembered. It was interesting to see this meeting of these warriors, each of them a patriot renowned for some exploit. To add extra luster to the toasts, Washington fired cannon to celebrate the health of Louis XVI.
When I used to hold together.
At one point, Washington asked Barbé-Marbois if he had seen Lafayette in France. The secretary answered in the affirmative, saying Lafayette had spoken of Washington with the tenderest veneration.
Total sense.
Barbé-Marbois recounted how Lafayette's American exploits had elicited praise from the king. Washington blushed like a fond father.
It's too bad we're a mirror within a mirror within a mirror.
Barbé-Marbois wrote in his diary.
It kind of takes away
Tears
the
fell from his eyes. He clasped my hand and could
to
hardly
know
utter
that
the
you're
words,
going so
I do
deep.
not know a nobler, finer
It's like
soul, and I
you're
love
always
him as my
watching
own
yourself.
son.
You're
It was
always,
yet another
the Buddhists have
extraordinary
it
proof
right
of the
in that
powerful
way.
feelings surging beneath the
It's not the
seemingly
core.
placid surface of the commander-in-chief.
It's not the core me to be grateful.
2 weeks later, Washington
The core
wrote a
me is the one
voluminous
that's
letter
watching
to
the
Lafayette,
gratefulness.
in which this
It wouldn't
outwardly
be the core
stolid
me
man
that would be
allowed
getting
sentimental
tortured. It would be the
emotions
one
to
floating
gush
above.
freely to the surface. His
Watching
first
them.
impressions
And
of
then I'd be
esteem
watching
and
the one-
attachment for
you know what I mean?
Lafayette,
Then
he
I'd be
said,
watching the
had
one that's
ripened
watching.
into perfect love and gratitude.
Nested.
Politely declining
Russian
Lafayette's invitation
dolls.
to visit France, he noted that he was unacquainted
going
with
back
French,
to
was too old to learn it, and would
turtles.
seem
It's
extremely
all turtles.
awkward, insipid, and uncouth,
All the way down.
especially with the ladies, if he spoke through interpreters. On the other hand,
Smell
he
what I'm
pressed
stepping in?
Lafayette and his wife to visit Mount Vernon after the war and see my rural cottage, where homely fare and a cordial reception shall be substituted for delicacies and costly living.
Okay, it's the lowest
Exactly
line.
how Washington transformed a slave plantation into a quaint
Go get it.
rural
Rest
cottage
of it.
remains a mystery.
Hold on.
In the letter, Washington presented
Hold
a
on.
light-hearted but vivid picture of his own ardent nature as a young man, as if Lafayette brought out some buried romanticism in him. Washington asked Lafayette to tell the Marchioness that I have a heart susceptible of the tenderest passion, and that it is already so strongly impressed with the most favorable ideas of her that she must be cautious of putting love's torch to it, as you must be in fanning the flame. But here again, methinks I hear you say I am not apprehensive of danger. My wife is young, you are growing old, and the Atlantic is between you. All this is true, but know, my good friend, that no distance can keep anxious lovers long asunder, and that the wonders of former ages may be revived in this. He ended on a somber note. But alas, will you not remark that amidst all the wonders recorded in Holy Writ, no instance can be produced where a young woman from real inclination has preferred an old man? Clearly Washington, 47, was lapsing into the wistful mood of an older man, nostalgic for his passionate youth. Whether he was thinking of Martha Washington or Sally Fairfax when he wrote this
Her
confessional
GI
letter,
tract is
we
so
do not
small.
know.
As soon as she
At the
empties
end,
it,
as if amazed at how he
no
had
more
rambled on, he
nutrients being
remarked,
pulled. She gets
"When I look
hungry."
back to the length of this letter, I am so much astonished and frightened at it myself that I have not
I have
the
to play a
courage to give it
significant role for the
careful
good
reading
of
for
the team
purpose
in
of
my own
correction."
life.
Though French diplomats were impressed with Washington, he remained in the dark about the plans of the Count d'Estaing. He heard stray rumors about his fleet's return to northern waters and stationed Major
On the
Henry
other
Lee
hand, I
the
could
New Jersey
ingratiate
shore
myself to
greet it,
myself and keep
but
it to
he could
myself.
not verify the information. The day after the
In this
state
way, I'd
dinner
be
with the
throwing
French,
myself away, just
Washington
taking
wrote
care
to
of myself.
d'Estaing that the British had beefed up their strength in New York to 15,000 men.
That's the way you
Reviving
need
his
to read
favorite
it, okay?
fantasy,
And that's
he
the way
wondered
it's
aloud
meant.
whether the Count planned to
I
attack
shit you
New
not.
York. Reduced to an almost servile status, Washington had to
upper line is
beg
what
for
counts.
scraps of information about French plans. I have taken the liberty to throw out these hints for your Excellency's information, Washington wrote gingerly,
have to make sure
and
not
permit
to
me to
force
entreat
things.
that you will favor
Yeah, I
me
might
as soon
have
as
it.
possible with
I
an
might be a
account
dink
of your
again.
Excellency's
Double income, no
intentions.
kids.
Washington yearned to hurl the weight of his army against the British in
Let
New
people
York
come and
or
go,
Rhode
and the right
Island.
one will arrive.
He seeded New York City with spies to ascertain the strength of the British garrison, all to no avail, as he felt
Read my
increasingly
mind
powerless
again.
vis-a-vis
I'll
his
tell you,
French
God's always
allies.
reading my mind. It's like, get the hell.
In late
What?
September, Washington learned that d'Estaing's fleet
I
had
not have a
appeared off the
private
Georgia
thought?
coast. When another month passed without information, Washington vented his frustration to Jackie Custis,
I don't know what this one means,
complaining
but
of his fickle French ally
This will
that
be
we
the first
begin to
time
fear
ever.
that some great convulsion in the earth has caused a chasm
I've
between
decided
this
it
and
must.
that
It
state.
applies to me.
that
I mean, how
cannot
can
be
it? Long
passed.
can it not apply to me?
Then Washington learned that d'Estaing and General Benjamin
Who's the
Lincoln
army
had
and who's
launched a
the state?
disastrous foray to recapture Savannah. They had stormed British fortifications and suffered more than 800 American and
So I've
French
got to get my
casualties,
finances together
leaving
so that
behind
I
the
can
plains strewed with
hire a
mangled
private
bodies.
detective.
Amid the general carnage,
Rescue Amanda.
d'Estaing suffered wounds in the arm and
That kind of
leg
thing.
before retreating with his fleet to the West Indies.
Be ready to.
As far as Washington was concerned, this unfortunate performance rounded out a
ready to,
misbegotten year of botched battles, missed chances,
exercise
enforced
modest
idleness.
and generous leadership.
Resigned to the seasonal end of combat in the northern
To
states, Washington took the bulk of his army into the safe haven of a winter cantonment in Morristown, New Jersey. Confronted by
Company,
early snow and hail,
family,
the soldiers chopped down
whatever else I
2,000
consider
acres of
myself a
timber
part of a group.
and roughed out a city of nearly 1,000 log
The,
cabins. Washington, and a month later
what's that called?
Martha, took up residence in the
Downsized
handsome
group.
mansion of Mrs. Theodosia
Coalition.
Ford, a substantial
Maybe I should start
three-story
giving
house
money
with
to them.
shutters and dormer windows that must have seemed palatial
Like,
compared to the compact Potts house at
you know,
Valley
I have
Forge.
it.
Unfortunately, the
Everybody does
unbending Mrs. Ford
something.
refused to yield 2 of 4 downstairs rooms, forcing the Washingtons to share the floor
I should
with
look that up.
The kitchen in particular was a scene
Giving
of
money
pure
to an
bedroom.
organization that
I
wants
have been
to
at
make
my
sure that we
present
all have
quarters
less money.
since the first day of
That's
December,
counterintuitive,
an irritable
but not.
Washington wrote to Nathaniel Greene in January, and
not
have
all of
not
us
a
either.
kitchen to cook a dinner in. His retinue of 18
majority
servants
of-
and
or the
all
minority
Mrs.
of us
Ford's
need less
are
money, so
crowded
we
together
give
in
the
her
majority
kitchen, and scarce one of them able to speak for the cold.
To flatten the curve.
To accommodate his aides, Washington
the outlook.
completed a
We need
couple
to-
of rooms
we
upstairs
don't want a
and
Bell's curve.
constructed an adjoining log cabin for daytime duties.
Skewed to the left or the
Washington
right.
braced for a winter that, for sheer misery, threatened to rival the trials of Valley Forge. As early as October, there wasn't a single
want the
pair of
medium
shoes in army
income to be
depots,
the average
and the
income.
situation was equally lamentable for shirts,
With,
overalls, and blankets. Since the
what?
continental
No
currency now
outliers? What's
fetched
that
only
called? I
3
know.
cents to the
Forgetting.
dollar, Congress
sigma
stopped printing
of-
money and appealed to the states to pay their
Sigma
own
5
troops.
equals Sigma 1.
As the
How's
latter
that sound?
issued their
Something
own
like that.
paper currency, prices soared even further.
Wouldn't it be
Washington captured
lovely?
graphically the ruinous hyperinflation when he told John Jay
Wouldn't it
that a
be
wagon load of money
wonderful?
will scarcely purchase a
I
wagon
can't
load of
believe
provisions. To Governor Morris, he
what you
protested, a rat in the shape
done
of a horse
to
is
me.
not to be bought at this time
You
for
made
less than
life so
200 pounds. He took seriously
easily. You
intelligence
want more, Millie,
reports
or is that
that
good?
the British
No.
in Philadelphia had
Isn't
purloined
she
wings of the paper
lovely,
used to print
made
currency
of
and planned to
love?
crush the rebellion by
Isn't
swamping the
she
country with
happy?
counterfeit money.
I could tell I'm going to be a lot. I could tell I'm going to be. I could tell I'm be a lot. Could tell I'm going to be a. Could tell I'm going to be a lot more efficient. And I've been a lot more efficient. If anything I write is God's answer, is shorter. By the time I get around to writing it, I've had more time to pan it. If you could pan something, then that means you've taken the whole thing in. And taken the juiciest parts and are able to be sarcastic. Not with God, but just, you know, make the usual types. What are there, 7 types of jokes? Exaggeration, salacious, somehow, play on words. But what I really think is usually, but not always, in my video. And if I don't think it yet, I hint at it probably in the written in a short way. And it'll make me reread it if I ever do get time. And I can read it while I watch the video by pausing the video. So that's my explanation for not writing a Bible with each answer. And Jesus wept.